So, can you actually teach a machine right from wrong? I mean, really teach it? It's easily one of the biggest, most important questions in tech right now. And we're going to dive right in, because we're about to get an inside look at this incredible award-winning research that's trying to do just that, build AI a moral compass.
And that really gets to the heart of the problem, doesn't it? How on earth are you supposed to code a universal right and wrong when we humans can't even agree on it? It's so personal, so tied to our culture. Well, that is the exact question this project, UNIMORAL, set out to answer. And get this, it just won a Best Paper Award at ACL, which is basically the Olympics for AI language research.
All right, here's the game plan for today. First, we'll look at why moral AI is so tricky. Then, we'll check out their amazing new framework for morality. We'll see how they built this massive data set, how they tested the AIs, what the machines actually learned. And then, we'll wrap up by looking at what's next.
Okay, so let's jump into Section 1, the problem. I mean, before you can build something better, you've got to understand why the old ways just weren't cutting it.
The researchers have this perfect way of describing it, a shattered mirror. Think about it. For years, AI ethics has been totally fragmented, with everyone working on their own little piece of the puzzle. The reflection it gave back was distorted because the data was all over the place. And, probably the biggest issue, it was almost all in English, reflecting just one culture's values back at us like that was the only one that mattered. So here's where their new vision comes in, and it's a total game changer. They said, okay, enough with the fragmented stuff. We need a holistic approach that looks at the whole process. Instead of being narrow and just English-focused, they made it multilingual from the ground up. And maybe most importantly, it's not just based on some random ideas. It's grounded in actual psychological research. That's a huge shift.
Right. So how do you fix that shattered mirror? Well, the UNIMORAL team started with their biggest idea, their most significant innovation, a totally new way to even think about moral reasoning. They call it the moral sphere. And you guys, this is a big deal. It is the first time anyone has taken all that deep psychological theory about morality and turned it into something a computer can actually process. It's not just about do this or don't do that. It models the entire journey, from when you first see a situation to thinking about what to do, to actually doing it, and then thinking about what happened. It's the whole shebang.
Let me give you a super simple example so you can see how this works. Imagine you find a wallet on the street. Okay, step 1, you assess the situation. Hey, a wallet. Step 2, you think about your options. I could return it, or I could keep it. Step 3, you make a choice. Let's say you return it. Then, and this is the key part, step 4, you judge the outcome. The owner gets their wallet back, which is a good thing. This simple 4-step process, that's the backbone of everything they built.
Okay, so they've got this incredible new theory. But a theory is just a theory without data, right? So let's get into the methodology. How did they actually build the massive data set they needed to bring this moral sphere to life?
And the logic here is pretty straightforward. If you want to build a better compass, you need better ingredients. It's like cooking. So they came up with this really smart solution, a dual-source approach that pulls from 2 totally different worlds.
So on one side, you have the clean lab. This is stuff from classic psychology tests. Very structured, very controlled, theoretically solid. But we all know life isn't a clean lab. So for the other side, they dove headfirst into the messy real world. We're talking about thousands of dilemmas scraped from Reddit subreddits like Am I the Asshole? The authentic, ambiguous, complicated stuff. And it's this combination, the clean lab and the messy real world, that makes this whole thing so powerful.
And they didn't stop there. This wasn't just another English-only project. No way. They built this data set across 6 really diverse languages. We're talking Spanish, Russian, Arabic, Chinese, Hindi. And listen, this is more than just running things through a translator. The whole point was to understand how morality itself changes from culture to culture. A huge, necessary step away from that old, narrow worldview.
But honestly, the depth of what they collected is just mind-blowing. It wasn't just, did they do the right thing or the wrong thing? They had people rate the principles behind their choices. Like, was this a utilitarian decision? The greatest good for the greatest number. Or was it deontological, based on a strict rule, like stealing is always wrong? They even got full psychological profiles of every single person who annotated the data. They weren't just asking what people chose, they were getting to the very core of why.
So now we get to the really fun part, the experiments. They've built this monster of a data set, this incredibly rich, detailed moral compass. Now it's time to put today's big AIs, the large language models, to the test like never before.
They basically set up a 4-part moral obstacle course for the AIs. First up, action prediction. If the AI knows about a person, can it predict what they'll do? Second, moral typology. Can it tell why they did it? Was it for the greater good or because they were following a rule? Third, factor attribution. Can it get even more specific and pinpoint if the decision was based on, say, emotion versus the law? And finally, consequence generation. Can the AI just come up with a realistic outcome for the action?
All right, so how did the AIs do? Let's get into the results, because this is where things get really interesting and honestly a little bit sobering when you see where AI is at right now.
The first big finding was really telling. Every single AI model, across the board, did way better on those neat and tidy clean lab scenarios. When it came to the messy, complicated, real-world stuff from Reddit, they struggled. And that just goes to show you how hard it's going to be to take these things out of the lab and into the real world, where nothing is ever black and white.
And then there's this, which is a really stark reminder of the biases baked into AI today. There was a massive difference in performance between languages. The models aced the English tests, but really struggled with languages like Hindi. It's a clear sign of just how unequal the training data is, and it creates what the researchers call ethical accessibility gaps for literally billions of people.
So what's the bottom line from all these tests? It's this. Today's AI doesn't get morality. It doesn't have any real internalized ethics. They're just ridiculously good at matching patterns. They can see what usually goes with what, but they don't have a clue about the actual meaning behind it. But it's not all doom and gloom. The results also showed some really cool, nuanced stuff. It turns out that different kinds of help worked for different tasks. So to predict what someone would do, giving the AI their moral profile was the best clue. But to figure out why they did it, the best thing was just to give it a few examples to look at. It just proves that this isn't a simple one-size-fits-all problem. It's incredibly complex.
So, where do we go from here? Well, one of the best things about this paper is how open the researchers are about its limitations. And that's absolutely crucial for figuring out what the next step should be.
And I think this is so important for good science. They're upfront about it. They say, look, machine translation can miss things. Our data collectors on Prolific might not be a perfect slice of the global population. 6 languages is great, but it's just a starting point. This kind of honesty is exactly what makes this work so trustworthy and so valuable. And that brings us to the final big question, the one that this whole project leaves us with. UNIMORAL has essentially given us the best, most detailed map of human morality we've ever had for AI. It's a monumental step forward. But now that we have this map, it forces us to ask an even bigger question. Who gets to decide where the borders are drawn?